I know it. I got a gavel? Oh, I didn't gavel last time either.
Have you changed seats on us again?
So I gavel when I start. Good afternoon. It is 3 p.m. and I'd like to call the January 3rd, 2023 Board of Supervisors meeting to order. I am Assistant County Administrator Anne Marie Riccardi. It is customary for the county administration to open the first meeting of the year and to call for the election of the chairman for the ensuing year. However, before we get to that, I'd like to take a roll call. So I'm going to do that because that's my job. Supervisor Coons? Supervisor Harris?
Here.
Supervisor Kimbrough?
Here.
Supervisor Williams?
Here.
Supervisor Jesse?
Here.
Supervisor Williams, will you lead us in prayer to start the meeting?
Let us pray. Oh, gracious God, our Father, we come once again. Father, in this brand new year, one we have not seen before. Father, we want to thank you for our lying down last night and our waking up this morning. Father God, and you have led us to this place to do your work. Father, we pray that the things we say and the same things that we do will be helpful to all. And teaching us, Father, that we are everybody's friend, and we should be treated that way. In Jesus' name, we all do pray. Amen.
Will all those who are able rise and join us in saying our Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Now, it's time to call for the election of the chairman. Do I have any nominations for the chairman of the Board of Supervisors for 2023?
I would like to nominate Lud Kimball as chairman.
Second.
I have a nomination by
Wayne Jesse.
Wayne Jesse.
Thank you. By Wayne Jesse and a second by Don Harris. Any other nominations?
I'll make a motion that we close the nomination.
Second.
Hearing no other nominations, let's have a roll call vote. Supervisor Coons? Supervisor Harris?
Aye.
Supervisor Kimbrough?
Abstain.
Supervisor Williams?
Aye.
Supervisor Jesse?
Aye.
There being a majority, I say congratulations. Sounds like Lud Kimbrough is the new chairman. I'd be happy to turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, I will open the floor for nominations for the office of vice chairman.
I'd like to nominate Don Harris for vice chairman.
Second.
Nomination by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Williams.
I'll make a motion that we close the nomination.
Second.
Nominations are closed. Do we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Harris?
Abstain.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Coons?
Congratulations, Don. Thank you. Next order of business is to establish time and place of regular meetings. The packet for this meeting has dates available. We have historically had this meeting commence at 3 o'clock. Mr. Kuntz, in his new position with Christ Church School, has been unable to be here at 3 o'clock. He's usually going to be here at 3:15 or 3:30. And so we would like to change the beginning time of the meeting to 3:30. Is there any discussion about that?
So moved on a motion to move it to 3:30.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Jesse. Any other discussion?
First.
Have a roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz? Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. So we will start 30 minutes later, and everybody will be here. Next order of business is approval of the consent agenda.
We
And
still
Miss-
have the dates?
Yep, Mr. Chairman, there are a couple of options on the July and September meeting
sorry.
that the board needs to decide upon.
Let me see.
These are the dates that usually follow a major federal holiday, Labor Day and July 4th in particular. And here lately, the board has moved their meetings to accommodate those holiday weeks as people may want to get out of town, go on vacations and
I
whatnot.
got you. Do you mind putting up so everybody can see this page 2?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so July 5 or 11 and September 6 or 12, because those are Tuesdays following long weekends?
That's correct. Labor Day and July 4th. We would recommend July the 11th and September 12th. The only other holiday that kind of fits in that is July 3rd, and that's the organizational meeting. It's a board's pleasure on that one, but the two major ones I think we've addressed with July 5th and September 6th. Also, we have an election year this year. I believe November 8th falls on a Wednesday, which is customarily what the board does for election years, especially when board members are up for election.
Gotcha. Okay. Does anybody have a desire to make a motion about decisions on July and September dates?
Is it critical we make a decision on that today or not? It
Yeah,
is?
you probably should adopt it all at once, so we can give it to the media and the paper. And real quick, the only other thing I omitted in a little discussion was the September 17th board retreat. We went back and looked at the comments during the retreat and afterwards, and I think y'all decided that that may be a good Friday for a board retreat, and we built it into the schedule of meeting.
So you're looking for a motion for moving the July and September meetings to July the 11th and September the 12th. That's your recommendation, is that correct?
That's correct.
So moved on the motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Don Harris was the first.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz? Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move to the approval of the consent agenda. That would be pages 3 through 33 in your packet. Any changes to any of the minutes or any comments on the consent agenda?
If not, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Harris. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kuntz? Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. Next, we will open the floor for public comments. Do we have anyone who submitted a
I-
request?
I do not have any submissions for public comment.
Would anybody like to address the board? Greg? Please identify your name
My name is Greg
and residence.
I live on Regent Road in Topping, Virginia. Sorry, Reggie, I've been moved to your area. So you get the squeaky wheel. I'm here, by the way, someone struck the timer because I talk too much. The reason why I'm here is to talk about school supplies, and I know it's. There we go. Is that better? Yes, sir. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
My comments today are related to school supplies. I realize it's a little bit out of season for the 23-24 year, but it's actually not. School supply decisions get made in the spring so that the list can be formulated and sent out prior to summer. I did have a chance to work some community events and work with some of the community leaders that were raising funds for school supplies, and gathered up a whole lot of feedback. I did get a chance to work with Dr. Sykes, and she spent well over an hour and change with me meeting one-on-one, and she's actually taken the comments to the administration within the school board and within the schools themselves with the principals. And she promised me they're going to work on the feedback that we got. But it raised some really significant concerns for me that we're probably, and on the second slide, you'll see that there's about $100,000 worth of things that are coming out of people's pockets in our community. That money doesn't stay in the county. It gets spent at Walmart and Targets and places outside the county. And I really think that this is something that we could formulate a more organized, structured way of gathering these supplies, funding these supplies, than just simply the church groups and the community service organizations and the individual people that are donating. Also, the quality of those donations was fairly poor. We're getting a lot of things like Amazon Basics and maybe even Rosarts. And if you ask the teachers, which, by the way, my wife is a career teacher, those materials are already starting to wear out this time of year. The markers are drying up and so on. So it's something that I feel like for these things that are commodity driven, can we start to organize and do this stuff in a way that's structured and potentially something that we can keep some of those dollars in the county, either purchased through bulk and with maybe some of our local vendors, and also organizing that across. I'm not the guy that knows everybody. My kids didn't go to school here, but I'm definitely a voice of the community. So I did put a couple items on the next slide about proposed. Oh, and the last little bullet here. Do folks know that our county is not rich? I mean, we've got families, over 50% qualify for free or reduced lunch. So keep that in the back of your mind that some of these funds are very important. On the next slide, I proposed a couple of things. So first off is, can we somehow raise some education and awareness that not all of the funds in the county are paid by taxes, that families put forth a lot of effort. I'd love to see us reduce this through a bulk purchase or a wholesale type of model. I'd also love to be able to, maybe I can organize it or maybe you guys can help me. Let's get some community letters together. And the last one, contact me offline, an online store of sorts where parents could purchase content, or purchase materials, and also have people that want to donate purchase through that site might help to organize all this. Something that an entity would need to take on. Thank you for your time. Sorry I talked so quick.
Thank you, Greg. Would anybody else like to address the board at this time? I'll close public comment period. And we'll move to constitutional officers' reports. Treasurer's report only in your packet on pages 34 through 39. Commissioner of Revenue, again, report only, page 40. Next is the registrar, and we have a special presentation. Would you like to come up, Melissa? Mr. Scott?
Yeah, pleasure.
Welcome. Thank you. Mr. Scott, Mr. John C. Scott, has served Middlesex County for 10 years with enthusiasm and distinction. John was an officer of election beginning in November 2012 and worked 9 elections, serving multiple precincts within the county. As a member of the electoral board for 7 years, John has helped ensure that elections were run with fairness, accuracy, and integrity. During his tenure, he's helped execute 18 elections, including 3 presidential elections and 3 gubernatorial elections. Among many great contributions, he successfully began the Providers of Precinct Support Program, otherwise known as POPS, which has proven huge in the retention of officers of election. Thank you very much, Mr. Scott, for your service to the county.
Thank you.
We have a certificate. We'd like to present you with, suitable for framing.
Sure.
And indeed, thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
May I get a picture? Sure.
Of course.
Don't forget my partner here.
Here we go. Thank you very much. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
John, you're going to be missed.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure serving. I do encourage, from my experience, to share with the board, that I do encourage others to step forward and participate in the various committees that support your activities here in the county. And thank you all for the past few years of service. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have agency and staff reports. VDOT is report only, pages 42 through 43 of the packet. And next, school matters, Dr. Seitz. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon and Happy New Year. So within your packet, we have two supplement requests. The first one is on page 44. I'll review that one first. And so the school security grant is a grant that we apply for through VDOE, and we were awarded $119,000 for that. Now that breaks apart a little bit, and you'll see at the top, the $95,200 is what the state portion of that award is with, it's 25%, correct?
Yes.
25% match, which you'll see is the $23,800, which is considered a local match for that award. The next thing on that page you'll see is a general fund request of $11,000. That is for us to be able to purchase a new tire changing machine for our bus garage, the one that we have now, and that's for all of our passenger vehicles, which we total about 40 with the school division. That device is no longer operational for us, so we're having to send our vehicles out for tire changing. So those are the requests on that page. Happy to answer any questions about that before I move to the next one.
Just one question.
Yes, sir.
When you said you're replacing the tire rechangement because we have to send them out,
Yes, sir.
how much it costs to send them out?
I'm going to call on Mr. Harris to see if he has that number. I don't know that he does. We might have to spitball you a little bit.
That's all. Mm-hmm. Not that you don't need a tire change.
Right. Like I said, we have 40 vehicles.
Obviously, it is not an extensive cost per tire. I mean, we're all familiar with that price. You're looking at, $20 per. But given the number of vehicles we have and the number of times we need to service these vehicles in the long run, it's just the best investment for the school to keep everything in-house.
I understand that, but right now we don't have a cost estimate
Cost
at
estimate.
all.
Sure.
If we send them out, that's the price,
Sure.
versus paying $11,000. And I'm not saying because I know about your tire change.
Yeah.
All right. But what I'm saying is that I'm just looking at the numbers. I can understand you saying that it's going to be better, because you get a new change and we don't have to send them out. But I'm saying without knowing what you is doing,
I can get a detailed number for you.
that'd be good. I just like to
I can
see,
get a detailed number for you to see at the rate it would take us to pay this machine off versus contracting out.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Because we were doing it in-house. It's not that we're asking for a new machine. We were doing it in-house, but it's broken and can't be used. So now we've had to shift gears, go out. So
Okay.
any other questions on those? All
I
right.
would, just a clarification on that. I would assume if you have to send them out, then you've got to pay a driver to take it out somewhere and wait and come. So, I mean, the cost of changing a tire is probably more than
It's the time.
changing the tire.
Right, sure.
right?
And the labor involved.
Yeah, okay.
Labor's more than that.
All
I
right,
can-
shall we, I'll entertain a motion for this budget supplement request. We better treat it as its own supplement request.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve budget supplement request FY 2023-22.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kuntz? Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries.
All right, we have another one on page 45, two parts to that one also. The first one you'll see, it's just an appropriation of donation that we received it was actually from the Moose Lodge to our Compass Academy for a gift purchasing and giving project that they did to award to local students in the county. The second part of that has to do all with the bonus payments that we were able to give that we were able to issue in December. Remembering that a good portion of that came from the state, and we made up the other portion so that all of our employees could benefit from that. And that was from ESSER 2 grant funds. And so now it's just appropriating it into the correct function code.
I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion that we approve budget supplement request FY 2023-23.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Harris. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz? Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't leave so quick.
Oh, sorry. I'm here. I thought I only had 3 minutes.
You know I'm going to have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Just briefly, the school supply issue that was just represented here a few minutes ago, just so I kind of know, where you guys going to run with this? How are you going to run with it?
So I have met with all of the principals about it to make sure. And so, to Greg's point, recognizing that the bulk of what the school budget is spent on comes locally. But then there's also, at the beginning of the year, they come out in the spring, are additional supplies that are needed in classrooms, whether it's markers and crayons and pencils and paper and things like that. And there was a large effort in the community this summer to be able to provide those items, especially for families that struggled. And so that's where Greg started putting some of these numbers together and recognize that when you're looking at about 1,200 children who need supplies, it's backpacks, it's if they have a lunchbox or a pencil box and those types of things, that can add up. And so we did meet to look at how could we build that into our budget, which would, of course, be an additional ask to the Board of Supervisors, so that we are able to purchase all of that in more of an organized manner and provide that to families. That was something to consider there. When I met with the principals, a lot of that conversation was to make sure that these lists are really evaluated when they go out in the spring, and it's not a continuation of what may have been needed in a classroom 5 years ago, but that's not really needed there, to cut those lists down to minimum. I will say that the principals do go through that to the point where they've had some really deep conversations with teachers about how many glue sticks you really need to use in your classroom. So some of that's already going on. That's kind of where we are. Now, if you want me to, I can add another $100,000 or ask to what will be coming to you in a couple of months to do that. It's a big organizational effort also. So I don't know exactly what the perfect answer is and the right answer is. It does bring attention to the fact that, our community does need to understand that his slide, I think, had 50% of our families are free and reduced lunch. It's closer to 60% of our families qualify for free and reduced lunch. All of our families are eligible for free lunch because we participate in the community eligibility program, and that's because that rate is so high. So all of our families are eligible. But even without them completing the paperwork to qualify for that, just their direct certification for the benefits they receive from social services and such, it's about 60% of our kids. And so it can be a hardship on families to provide some of those extra supplies that are needed. There are additional fees here and there for some things, whether it's a student activity fee that supports some of the things that go on in the school, or it's a fee to be in Builders Club and things like that. Often there's, and you can see the fee list, which we publish every year, and he's included in here. A lot of our clubs at the high school do have additional fees there. And so that's where the community organizations that got together this summer really recognized that, like I said, it can be a hardship, but does everybody in the county really know that? And I think that's why, Greg and I met. He's going to present the same information to the school board, and so that it is really more information out there so that our county is aware.
I'm glad you mentioned some of those things, because my concern would be, how does the community know, which you've already identified that seems to be an issue, and what direction would the school system go in being able to put, and advertisement is not the right word, but something in the paper regularly talking about some of the additional needs that the school system may need over and above your budget. And I'd encourage you guys to look at that, whether that be through the communications with other civic organizations, to let them know what you're looking for or where you're falling short, and or how do we get that information out in a public view from a paper standpoint. Does that mean that the school board or school system has a dedicated column, maybe every other week or once a month or whatever, just kind of chatting about what the needs are that you guys are falling short of? I think that would be big in trying to get solicited support from the community, but they got to know what the problem is before they're going to be willing to do that.
Right, that makes sense. And we've discussed the fact that we need to get more information out about our schools, specifically using the Sentinel. We've talked about establishing a time period that we're regularly doing that, and I think this is a good suggestion for something like that to be presented in the paper, just as here's what tax dollars support, here's other needs that we have that don't fall into that category, but they're still needs, and they're strong needs for our school division.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies.
You're welcome.
I got a couple questions, because I was thinking about what he was saying as far as the really need. I'm the type of person you really need. Who would be the persons that really know the kids need a book pack, pencils, and driving the school bus. I could get 100 pencils off the floor at any time. Without the students being accountable for some of the things that we give them for nothing, then it's just going to take more than 2 or 3 people to do this, in my opinion. And you did mention principals just a while ago, but we got teachers. And teachers are going to be closer to these students than the principal is, or even to the superintendent, because they're there every day. And without some type of, and this is just my opinion, without some type of accountability, then you could see, for instance, if you were teaching a class, and you got 30 kids in it, then you need X number of dollars to buy these things that you'll be funding for. You put it in the budget, everybody see it. But also at the same time, and making the teacher accountable as well as the students, because you're giving to them every day. And what I'm saying is they're throwing it away. So the waste, I'm saying they throw it away because as bus drivers, you see it. You could let ink pens, pencils, magic markers, this is what you see. So I'm saying it from a point of looking at the whole thing different. If we're going to give somebody something, they got to be accountable in some kind of way. And at the younger age that they are, the more it'll go through the system, because we do waste a lot of things. And the easiest thing to do is just to say we need more. Because, we got coming up in the years, and all of us going to have to think of a way how can we get more for less? And that's basically taking care of what you got. And that's how, partly I see it, because I do see the waste. I'm not guessing being an outsider. I see it on the inside. And I see the need, but I'm going to say once again, we got to be some kind of way accountable. And I'm saying, throwing the teachers, I see, well, if you teach my child every day, and he come back to classroom without a pencil, without a magic marker, then we got, and that's different than what you were saying. So making an awful lot of frowns.
I'm trying to understand. I think, and I was going to ask you too, but I think her point is that she's taken it back to the building principals, and they address the issues at the building level. And so, am I right in saying that? And that so the building principal, that's the hierarchy that we take, and so the building principal then puts it out to their staff, and so that's how they would handle that. But I know what you're getting at.
That sounds like a real good way.
I know what you're getting at, but it's not just us going straight to the teachers. We follow the
I'm not saying go to the teachers. I'm saying you got a level that you got to be accountable.
But it's the principals that would get with their teachers. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Teams are built with everybody plays. So if you put too much hierarchy anywhere, then you don't have no help nowhere. So when you empowering people to do something, their empowerment comes through staff. I mean, one or two people be glorified, but their power comes through staff. So I'm not, disagreeing that we need these kind of things, but I think we're going to have to be accountable, because we're going to look at an interesting year. We're going to have to be accountable for the things we've done. And, the ones that do it the best sometimes get a supplement or something, I don't know. But I just throw it out there at you.
I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. I participated in the event this summer, and it was great to see the community come together and get supplies together for those that have needs. But we know we didn't cover them all. We know we didn't do it efficiently. And we know this isn't a problem that's unique to Middlesex County. So what I would challenge you to do is to look at this and look for a pilot opportunity. Maybe we start with the elementary school, and there's reasons why that doesn't make sense, but maybe there's an opportunity to say, hey, let's pick out some teachers and some principals that are really hell-bent on fixing this, including what Reggie's bringing to our attention, which is inordinate amounts of waste. We're teaching our kids right now with the current system, not just in Middlesex, but everywhere. I see the students in my classroom that I just came from, they don't bring their notebook in January. And they're being graded on their notes. I mean, these kids are coming out of a pandemic and they're all over the place. That doesn't excuse the behavior. That's what we're trying to teach in school, is that we have to have a certain level of responsibility for the materials that the taxpayers are paying for, and the teachers and the people that are working in this community. But we definitely identified a problem last summer that's been existing not just in this school, but throughout the country. And before we throw money at it, I think Reggie's dead on. We have to have something in place that says, yeah, we'll throw more money at that because the community can't pay for this themselves in an equitable way across the demographics that exist. But we should be doing exactly what Reggie's saying, less with more, and focused on, if we're going to give this resource to the schools, we need to know that not just the principals, but the teachers and the students are bought into the notion that the community is coming together to make this more affordable so that they can get the education that we want them to have. So I see an opportunity when you look at this all broken out by grade. We could target maybe some of the lower grades where it's more expensive and get them in these good habits of just knowing, hey, we run out. So let's not throw pencils on the floor of the bus. So, I mean, I think the fact that you're bringing it to our attention is great. I think the fact that the community is already engaged in trying to solve the problem out ahead of us is great. Now we just need to go back with the community and see what is the hybrid solution where we can use both philanthropic money and county money to solve the problem. So I think this is all great talking points and a great thing that we're bringing here to us. But as Lud reminds me all the time, this is the school board's decision. And I think it really comes down at the end to a needs-based budget. And if you're saying these are needs, include them in your budget. And then we'll tell you if we're giving you what you need or not. But you have to come up with a determination as to what is needed. And that's what it comes down to every year. And if we're going to miss your needs, then we'll have to own that. But if your needs have increased, as the county and the community have pointed out to us, and we need to address that, then we need to still be responsible about how we do it so that we're not just throwing money away. But I think it's great that you're bringing it to our
Right.
attention.
And it was actually, I think, John, you missed the beginning. It was during public comment. It was the community that brought it before, and then which led into a discussion right now. We certainly recognize it's a need, but I also know that when I go into building a budget for the next year, and believe me, we're going through line by line and cutting instruments and things like that, even to the tune of a few $1,000s. This is an additional $100,000 ask if we're asking. So I recognize that. Mr. Harris asked, how are we going to solve it? And I don't have an answer for that. So it could be that it is something that, with the community's help or something, it's started as a pilot in the younger grades. I think we've talked about a lot of potential solutions or ideas right now. But I do recognize it would be a significant piece to build into our budget. That may not sound like a lot of money when you're talking about a $20 million budget, but it does mean a cut somewhere else. And so I recognize that also.
And these are fees that are outside of our budget.
They are.
currently.
Mhm. Yes, they're all outside of our budget
These are outside
currently.
of our budget.
Mhm. And I agree also that I do not like waste.
No.
And so there's a lot of teachable pieces to this also.
I'd like to say one thing too. How active is your PTA? I know back in the day, the PTA were the ones that kind of helped out with, and it's all about all us working together. Parents, teachers, administration,
right.
county. And how active is your PTA this day and time?
So just like in past years, it's most active in the elementary school, where they work to provide some things. Dr. Sanders has just gotten an official PTA started at the middle school. That is just started this year, and so they're working on some things. When we move to the high school level, it typically shifts to athletic boosters type thing, where there's a lot of support on that side. So there's activity at all three schools. The most of it is at the elementary school.
Okay.
My 3 minutes are up. I really am joking. I'm happy to stay. I'm happy to stay.
Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next, we have a social services update. On the agenda, it says report only, but we are fortunate to have Rebecca join us because Supervisor Williams appropriately asked a question about changes in benefits that are occurring right now, and some citizens have asked questions about that. And thank you so much for being here to help us understand.
Yes, thank you so much for the invite and the inquiry. Happy New Year to everyone. It's great to see you all in 2023. And I was going to wait until my February budget update to tell you all of this information. However, I think it is appropriate that we start the new year knowing what's ahead of us come spring. So, as you all know, during the COVID public health emergency, additional benefits were extended to all citizens receiving SNAP or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance. And what that means is that even though a family may have qualified for a given amount of SNAP assistance based on their income, every family eligible for SNAP received the maximum allotted amount of federal funding. And again, SNAP is a 100% federally funded program. And so the federal government provided additional benefits to folks each month up to that top amount. So for a family of four, and this just went up, it's just under $1,000 that they receive each month. That's the maximum allotment. Most families prior to COVID actually in Virginia received just over $400. So that's sort of the average amount that a family of four received prior to COVID. During COVID, so since 2020, they've been receiving the maximum amount. What's really important about this for Middlesex is that seniors, because of their Social Security income, they typically receive about $16 a month in SNAP benefits, which, if you've been to the grocery store, will buy you a pack of gum and a water, maybe, these days. So, they have also been receiving the maximum allotment since 2020. That all goes away come April. And so what the federal government has done, they've done a couple of things. So for families to try and address this, they have extended their P as in Paul, PEBT benefits. And so they've taken some of the funding and they've reallocated it, making the additional allotments in the summertime for kids not in school. So families will, during the summer, receive additional SNAP dollars. During the school year, every child, and it was referenced earlier, every child receives free lunch because of the 50% and over poverty rate. So in the summer, the kids will continue to receive additional benefits. But what we have, I'll break it down. What we have is, John and his family have been getting, close to $1,000 a month for their groceries. For a family of four, that's, if we break that down, that's pretty typical. And especially with the rising cost of groceries, which I'll get to in a moment. And say John is sort of at the upper tier of the income threshold, because again, about 50 or more % of these folks are working families. His $1,000 is going to go down to, $450, $500. And so that's going to obviously be a missing element. And we could have a continued discussion about the root causes of poverty and all of those things. But bottom line, people are going to be hungry. They've been fed for 3 years. They've been used to getting these amounts of assistance, and it's going to go away. And so, again, the federal government has, extended some summer benefits for families. There is no such extension for seniors. With the rising cost of food, Hands Across Middlesex, USDA, they have, and this has been reported publicly, they have said the rising cost of food is a challenge to their organization. It's a challenge, I think, to anyone who's been to the grocery store lately and seen, the rising costs of basics, milk, bread, cheese, etc. So, this morning I was on my way in the upper part of the county and saw this parking lot filled with cars at a church, and I thought, okay, did I get my days wrong? Because it was very, very early. I'm not a morning person. But no, it was Tuesday. It was the mobile food pantry day up toward Jamaica. And so just incredible that church parking lot was filled. So you think about after Christmas, things being closed, people not having access, and the Hands Across Middlesex volunteers were out there getting people food, feeding people. Again, we could go into root causes of why people need that. But bottom line, we as a community certainly are not going to let our most vulnerable seniors and children go hungry. And so Hands Across Middlesex, certainly, I don't want to speak on their behalf. They know about this. It's upcoming. It's widely publicized in the food distribution world. But it's certainly for social services here in Middlesex and statewide and nationwide, really, some of my colleagues are concerned about worker safety when people's benefits stop. They may not understand why. They may think it's something that, I decided or one of the workers at my agency decided. So we started to have conversations about how we message it out ahead of time. But that, at the end of the day, for John's family, who's used to getting $1,000 and now that's been cut in half and he can't feed his kids, that's going to be a problem and he might get angry. So we're thinking about that. And again, Hands has been preparing for this. So we started trying as much as we could as a system to prepare for the end of the public health emergency as soon as it began. No one had any idea that it was going to go on for 3 years. And so what we've done is created, we've lowered nationally, statewide, locally, child poverty, is significantly decreased. There are fewer children in this country going hungry, fewer children in this county going hungry. And I don't know. We're going to have to take it a day at a time and prepare as best we can. But yeah, it's a huge concern. And that's just SNAP. So that's just food. Medical insurance, same thing, around the April timeframe. And by the way, we have more households, almost 900, receiving SNAP benefits than in recent history. And that includes the recession, or the Great Recession in 2008 to 12 timeframe. That's the most ever. We had been down prior to COVID. We had been down to around 650 households. So this isn't people, this is households. So medical insurance, same thing. We have not done renewals for 3 years. And so we haven't reevaluated, sorry, John's income in 3 years to see if he still qualifies. And so what that means is if John did, got a couple of promotions during COVID, he might be just over that income limit to get Medicaid, and that's health insurance. What if his job doesn't provide benefits? Suddenly, he's on the hook to pay for a private plan for, a family of 4 when he's been getting medical care and good treatment for free. So not for free, no cost to him. Certainly we are paying for it. That's a 50-50 state-federal split. And so that's also going to be hitting us. And again, same as with SNAP, we have a record number of Medicaid cases and folks qualifying for Medicaid because we haven't been renewing their eligibility for 3 years. Rent and utilities. Dominion had a moratorium that ended, and so we have spent an astronomical sum of money, most of it local donations. From Hands Across Middlesex, local churches contribute to them. They give us an allocation each quarter. And then Zor Baptist Church also gives us an allocation each quarter. We have spent almost $20,000 just helping people with power bills in 6 months. So imagine if you had to make a choice, you knew your power wasn't getting cut off. So maybe you were going to take your car in for repairs. Maybe you were going to upgrade your car because you had a little extra money. Again, we could get to the root causes and the hows and the whys, but at the end of the day, last weekend, or weekend before, what was it, 9 degrees? Am I responsibly going to let someone go without heat? No, we have to figure it out. So far, we've been able to maintain it. River County's Community Foundation has reached out. They are aware of the issue and are considering making an emergency decision and some possible funding, but that is in their hands. I have certainly advocated that we receive it. We're balancing right now. We're maintaining. We have not, I did have to say no to one person. Their power did not get turned off. We were not able to help with the arrearages. And so that was a single, able-bodied adult. So we have to draw the line. And I don't like to make those decisions because that person certainly was not able to keep their power on. So anyway, instead of, and I was talking to Lincoln with River Counties about this, my goal at my agency is to provide programs to lift folks out of poverty and to bring services to this community to get them on a path to employment or get them mental health treatment or substance misuse treatment or whatever that may be. And that's how I like to use grant funding. I don't like to use grant funding to pay Dominion Power for their power bill. It pains me. And he said, I know, but, and that's the thing. We cannot let people be cold and we cannot let them be hungry. That's our job, my job. So sobering update. We are all, as a system, we have monthly calls about this. We, as a state, are doing what we can to prepare. But it's going to be a day by day. When someone shows up to get their prescription or takes their child to the pediatrician or, goes to Food Lion and can't afford, to buy the full week's worth of groceries, it's going to hit this community hard. About a third, of our total population receives these benefits. So we're not just talking about, a small number. We're talking, over 3,000 citizens in this county that are going to be impacted in one way or another. So, on a positive note, hands, for those of you who have been involved with that organization, extraordinary during the pandemic. They delivered. We simply called, and if someone needed something, was afraid to go out, not a problem. They delivered. And they will continue to do so. They'll be out at that church at, 7:30 in the morning on whatever Tuesday they're assigned to be there. And so this community will come together. We'll be okay, but it is going to be a challenge. So I do thank you for the inquiry and happy to try and answer any questions.
Just two questions. The heating assistance for the elderly went down.
No, it didn't go down. Their SNAP allotments come April will go down, but their heating assistance, no, that didn't.
Remain the same thing.
Yeah.
That heating and cooling. Like I was said to some people call me and say the cooling, it was getting more money for cooling than it was heating, and they couldn't understand it. I said, me neither. And I just, when you're doing a beautiful job for, transparency so everybody can understand it, this thing is not easy and everybody's involved in it. And the elderly is, they're at a point that a lot of people's getting one check.
Right.
And that means they haven't paid any Social Security, and some of them are widowers.
Yep.
They don't have it, they're staying in single households, they're trying to stay at home. And when some of these bills come up, it's hard for them to pay. They'll pay one and wait on the other one and pay the other one. So I was, thinking just about, the elderly and, like the schools and like you were saying that, people can't find any work. And I see so many cars around that school. I don't know where all these checks are going to, because it seems like nobody want to work. But anyway, you answered my questions. You answered everything well, and I can pass on. One other question, I don't know if that's under you all or not. Personal property relief for elderly, is that under you all?
No. We do work very closely with the Commissioner of Revenue's office, though. They are very communicative with our office about those matters, and they, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago directly referred someone to us. And so we do work very, very closely with them, and we do have limited funding to assist with personal property and real estate,
And that amount
fees.
was $500, wasn't it? It's the max they could get. I think the county maybe 10 years ago, or Wayne might know. Maybe 10 years ago, they haven't changed anything relief for the elderly in over 10 years.
That is not under my purview, but again, we do work closely with the Commissioner of Revenue's office. They communicate with us very well, but we don't have any say over the amounts of assistance. But we are here to help, if especially an older adult who can't afford their taxes.
No, I know, I think everything's in place, but I'm saying the increase itself have been the same, have it been for 8, 9 years? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
But nobody knows. It's the same, right? And to get it approved greater than that, the supervisors have to come in and say something. That's just one point I just wanted to bring out, Everybody doing fine, but it had been for $500 for the last 50 years, and they haven't really done anything. And basically say you want to help the seniors. You'll hear one of us up here, sometime before this year, so I'd say we want to help the seniors, yet we're not, looking at how we want to help them and reaching out to some of their problems. And that's why I'm glad that when I talked to Lud, I told them, don't ask you. I said, I can come and, I said, I can talk to you anytime, to send somebody else. 'Cause I just want to enlighten the community on what they can get and what they can't get and why they're not getting it, and I appreciate you coming. I really do.
Yeah, certainly appreciate the inquiry and happy to answer any additional questions. And certainly we'll keep everyone updated on how we're looking, especially come April, May. And if we need anything, I will certainly let you all know.
Rebecca, are you aware of anything at the state level? I mean, it looks like the federal government in its efforts to deal with inflation are probably hitting poor people hardest. The inflation obviously hits them. These are things that they have to buy. These are not luxuries that they're backing away from, heat and food. So when these programs are expiring, and you've listed a number of them, and I'm sure there are more, it means there's a gap that the federal government has left. And counties really aren't designed to step in. And so if the federal government's making this decision, I think the next place that I look for the kind of money that counties are probably talking about is to the states. Is there anything going on with our delegate or our representatives at the state level? Are you aware of anything that's before the governor?
So there's the bills have not, they're sort of trickling right now. The onslaught will be, I'm told, the 10th so next week. But one thing the state is looking at that I think will help, especially with heating and cooling, is making that a year-round program. So right now, folks are only eligible for certain portions of the year. And we constantly, even though we do public outreach and try and remind people and mail them things, we do have clients that bring that application in a day late and they don't get the assistance that they need. And so one thing the state is trying to do is looking at making that a year-round program so that someone could come any day. So yes, there are, and that would take additional, but so yes, there are strategies and there are programs that we're looking at, and we'll see what comes out next week.
Will you keep us apprised, maybe through the administration? Just let us know if there are things in the state that are changing the narrative in terms of how badly your funding is being cleaved from the federal government. And then my last question, you're obviously well connected with counties all around us that have similar demographics. What are other responses? I mean, is everybody just sitting there like, that's great, where do you expect us to get that money? Or what are other counties doing, or is it too early to say?
I would say that at least the county served by the River Counties Community Foundation, I mean, we're all experiencing the same thing and have all kind of reached out. And outreach works differently in every county, no matter the size. I try to think we do it very well. We're very streamlined, kind of back to that school supply discussion and the direction that gentleman is trying to go. He's talked to me about that, by the way. We do try and keep things very streamlined and organized and approachable for the public and whoever needs assistance. So I think we do a good job with that. I know that, again, some agencies are putting together emergency food packets and trying to just do general outreach. Hey, this is coming, be prepared, try and buy in bulk now while you have the funding. Shelf-stable items, those kinds of, so yeah. But beyond that, yeah, we're just waiting.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for your attention. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I personally was enlightened to so much that I was unaware of the changes that you're anticipating happen, and I'd be surprised if other people also didn't learn a lot. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for your interest. I hope you all have a great rest of the meeting and a good start to 2023.
Okay, next we have Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
Presentation of the audit.
It's my pleasure to present the audit to you. Just got to get the folder open so I can get to my notes. I say on the outset, everything went very well with the audit this year. We always enjoy being in Middlesex, and the people here make it very easy, at least to get the numbers and get to what we need. So thank everybody for that. On the outset, the financial statements have an unmodified opinion again. We didn't have any compliance issues on the federal level, and we had 3 things that we audited this year. 2 that were major programs. One was the second year of auditing the waterline grant from USDA, or grant/loan. This year we had the ESSER funds for the schools that were state COVID money, or federal COVID money that came through the state. And we also threw in a non-major program that we audited, was the SNAP administration this year. No material weaknesses or significant deficiencies found in reviewing controls. The corrective action that we noted last year that needed to occur for the bank reconciliations, we saw that in place, so that's no longer a concern this year. And one thing I would note, this year there was a Governmental Accounting Standards Board statement number 87 that had to be applied this year. It was a big deal on your staff, and you got a consultant in to help compile leases and whatnot, because this was on leases. Interestingly enough, when you did all the work for the general fund and the overall government-wide statements, we added $129,000 worth of leased assets. We took off $132,000 worth of lease liabilities, changed your net position by $3,100. Not much, but it was a lot of work getting to that point. School board, we added $143,000 worth of assets, took off $143,000 worth of liabilities, less than $1,000 difference. But still, it was a lot of work getting there. The tax collection went down a little bit this year. I want to watch that again next year, see if that was a one-year anomaly. But I would expect you would see a bump in FY23. We just want to track that. And one other thing, your ARPA money, you have on your balance sheet really a liability for unspent ARPA funds. They will move to become a revenue as they are spent. And so at June 30th, you had about $1.8 million that was not included in fund balance at that time, because like I said, that will move in as revenue as the money is spent. Other than that, I think we had a management letter that we do kind of update every year. At the end of the year, the general fund balance was about $15.1 million. If you take 20% of that out for cash flow, you're still left with probably $7.5 million that you could apply this year if you needed to a preparation. Not saying you need to do that, but just pointing that out. Then there's one error in the budget that I'm going to fix tomorrow and send a new page to Ms. Riccardi in the morning. It just deals with, there's no overexpending. The overall did not change, but there was just a classification in expenditures between principal being paid on debt and contribution to the school board. So we'll make that change, and you'll get that paper tomorrow, or page tomorrow. Other than that, that's what I wanted to present to you today, other than take any questions.
If you don't mind, I'm aware that there are some people that don't like to spend a whole lot of time going through
Right.
audits. And so I would like to go through, I spent some time.
Okay,
and
I'll
made some notes and
be
would
happy to
appreciate
answer.
if you would
Yes, sir.
affirm or tell me that I've misunderstood it.
Okay, yes, sir.
Because I think that my impression is the county should be quite proud of its financial position.
Oh, it should. No question.
And I'll just run down the points that
Okay.
that I took and ask for you to
Yes, sir.
comment or affirm, please. The net bonded debt per capita, that is for each citizen, decreased again in the past year from $1,695 to $1,462. And looking historically, that compares very favorably from 9 years ago, when it was over $2,000.
Yes.
And from its peak in 2016 of $2,400.
Right, yes, sir.
So I think it's important for all of us to understand that the bonded debt per citizen has been in decline and has been well managed down to
Right.
only $1,462.
The only provision I would add to that is that does not include the debt on the water system, because that's
Right,
in its own thing.
right.
Yes.
The net position of the county is $23.3 million,
Yes,
which is up from 21.1 prior year. A $2.2 million increase in net
Yes.
position.
and that's really owned out, if I could point out,
Net position, assets minus liabilities.
on page 13, your committed and unassigned fund balances, which are really more on the budgetary basis than the net position. You know, that's kind of what the management comment dealt with. But you're at 15.1 million in unassigned general fund balance. The net position is a good number. It's a good number to look at from year to year, but it also includes capital assets. It also is taken off the debt, some other things in there that on a budgetary basis, you really do more from Exhibit 3 backwards than you do on Exhibit 1 and 2.
So the 15.1 million of general fund balance is a more important.
Yeah,
figure
I think
for us to
it is, because
recognize.
it's really the way you budget each year.
Got you. Thank you. I noted that a comment, the combined long-term obligations decreased by $2.7 million.
Right, yes, sir.
From 20.8 to 18.0, and the prior year, they had increased slightly. So total county debt decreased significantly.
Yes, sir.
Just a comment on pension. It's always difficult to understand exactly what pension liabilities mean.
Yes.
But it seemed to me like it was a positive that the net pension asset at the end of the year actually increased.
Yes.
First, that it is an asset
Right.
instead of a net liability,
Right.
and that it increased from 2.6
It is for the
to
county,
2.9.
it's not for the school board. Theirs is a liability, but it's not as big, and that really has to do with the economic conditions now. And actually, a year ago, because I think the actuaries were done at 2021, but they will change from year to year depending on how the actuaries work out. And also, your rates that you pay VRS go up or down depending on where those numbers go.
Right.
I think they're determined every 2 years.
Great. Any other comments that we should appreciate?
That really is it for me, unless, like I said, I could answer any other questions. I think the audit went very well.
Thank you.
And given the corrective action that you saw last year, I think that is very, very good for the county.
So a couple quick questions. Any other corrective actions out of this audit?
No.
None. And all corrective actions from previous audits are closed?
Yeah, there was just
the
one
one.
corrective, and
Okay.
that's closed.
And you mentioned the ARPA funds. Is that just a comment? There's really no action for us to do.
No,
We're managing that.
I wanted you to understand that if you looked at the fund balance doesn't include the ARPA monies that you've received.
But we're not mismanaging it in any way.
No,
It's
no,
just
it's just-
the way that appears
Yeah,
from an
you-
accounting perspective, you wanted to be clear.
It just doesn't appear as revenue until it's actually spent.
And then you mentioned tax collection down a bit. Were you speaking of personal property tax, the
It was
tax
really
rate?
It was really overall. The overall collection percentage went down about 2.5%, 3%.
So across personal property and real
Yes.
estate, they had an average of 98.3 and now they're at 96 point something or
Yeah,
something
yes,
like
sir.
that. But that was worth highlighting from your perspective, that our collection percentage is actually off a little bit.
I usually will point it out either positive or negative.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
But since I normally do it the other way, and it was been 98 or whatever in the past, I wanted to point the other out too. But I think that's really just that if we look at it 2 years in a row and it's down, we need to focus on why.
Yeah, and I think part of that may be some of the other reports that we're going to be hearing and have already heard. People are struggling to pay all their bills.
Yeah.
And taxes are, I know death and
Sure.
taxes are permanent, but they are bills that are hard to pay for some people, particularly in a high
Yes, sir.
inflationary environment. So, I don't know that my reaction is to go to the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer and say, why aren't you getting all this
Right,
money?
I understand, yeah.
But at the same time, it's good that the public be aware that in fact we are off a little bit in our collections, and I'm sure those constitutional officers are looking at that. But we also have to realize that this is the times that this budget season has us in. There are going to be a lot of shortages, and it's not just going to be on what we can pay for as a county, but what our constituents can pay in terms of taxes. And so that statistic jumped off at me, and I just wanted to clarify. Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, we did, this is as of June 30, correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
And we did defer the tax payment deadline by 30 days. So this is a question to our administrator. Would that normally put the tax collection behind June 30 so that,
That would absolutely have, that would absolutely have an effect. I know another locality that's close to you did the same thing. Theirs went down.
yeah, so we
As well.
might see it actually
Yeah.
go back the other way
Yeah.
this time.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to what Paul just said is, in a normal environment, it seems like every 4 to 5 years, just based on my experience and sitting through the audits and, of course, the budget processes, we'll have a year where the collections taper off a little bit, and then the third year when the tax attorneys get involved for a potential auction and things like that, they'll pop back up. So it's somewhat of a cyclical type of thing, too, where they'll drop off one year and then pick back up the next, and you'll get more in back taxes in years 2, 3, and 4, back taxes on 1 year that makes everything whole. That's why we try to estimate on the low side for real estate and personal property collections.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you so much,
Okay.
Mr. Lee.
Thank you very much.
And, Mr. Chairman, we would ask that you accept the audit with the corrections noted by Mr. Lee and have a vote on that, please.
I move that we accept the audit with the corrections noted by Mr. Lee.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kuhn, second by Mr. Harris. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have emergency management update with Mr. Lehman. Welcome, David.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good afternoon. Anne Marie, can you flip that PowerPoint? We are at the 4-year mark, and as by state code, we are required to update our emergency operation plan. So we started with this about probably 9 or 10 months ago, starting to do our updates. To maintain compliance with the state code. Our plan, 4 years ago, we did a restructuring of our plan. We got it more in line with other state plans, got to be a more all-hazard plan versus plan-specific, and we also changed to emergency support functions. So this plan is all-inclusive, and it applies to our entire county. It's a multidiscipline plan, meaning that it can be used for a single type of event or a multi-type of event. And it can also be used for natural or man-made disasters. So it's very generic how it works and lays all of our planning aspects out. And it also, in our plan 4 years ago, we also adopted the National Incident Management System as our guideline for managing our incidents. So really what the plan does is outlines the roles and responsibilities of the different agencies that are responsible for the response, as well as how we integrate state and federal partners. And we worked through this. This plan has been reviewed by the Virginia Department of Emergency Management prior to bringing it to you as well. So it basically does three things for us in three large, broad categories. It's public education and mitigation, how we deal with it prior to the event, the emergency response, how we deal with it during the event, and then the recovery after the event. How do we get back to normal? So the plan's laid out in a simple format. We have the basic plan, that's the overarching guidance for us. Then we have emergency support functions, which identify the primary and secondary agencies for each of those functions. We have hazard-specific, incident-specific annexes, and then we have supporting annexes as well. I sent this, because this is such a large document, I sent this to you, I think, 2 months ago, and then again in the package this month for your review, because it is a very lengthy document. So as far as our emergency support functions are concerned, these are some of our emergency support functions. The other is going to be on the other side. I will say, as you look through this, you'll see there are a lot of disciplines that have to come together to provide input. So all of the stakeholders were contacted and asked to review their emergency support function that they are responsible for. We did get feedback, and it's been incorporated into this plan. One thing that we did do this year is we added a new emergency support function number 16, which is military affairs. That's basically because we just didn't have it. And if we ever needed to use the National Guard or any type of Department of Defense assets, it basically gives us a framework of how we ask to request that. These are our specific annexes that we utilize. Animal care and control this year had to be reworked because of the fact the Sheriff's Office took over animal control. So we had to work that one a little bit more than the others. These are specific annexes. I should have walked. So at the end of the day, the big thing that we did is we had a comprehensive review. We removed the duplicate information. We updated department responsibilities. We added the emergency support function, military affairs. FEMA had some changes, and we have incorporated a radiological ingestion pathway plan into a supporting annex that was required by FEMA of any locality within a 50-mile range of a nuclear power plant. We've updated contact information, and the plan still remains as a multidisciplinary plan. So my request here this evening is I would ask the board to consider adopting the 2023 Emergency Operation Plan, the annexes and supporting annexes, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the emergency operation plan.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Kuntz. Any other discussion? Questions for Dave?
I would just say thanks for all the work and coordination that goes into getting those things up to date, and the amount of topics you have to be an expert in is phenomenal.
What's on paper? Helped you guide you. No, thank y'all.
Dave, roll call?
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
And Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye.
Thank you.
Carries. Thanks so much. Good work, Dave. Next is Planning Director, Dave Kretz.
Good afternoon. I'm just briefly going to discuss a comprehensive plan. I'm not going to spend too much time right now, but I just want to make the board aware. The Planning Commission is going to be jumping in with both feet this year to try to get this updated. We have a lot of changes happening in the county, our water system, our advent of our sewer coming in. There's a lot of things that we need to get ready for that comp plan. The comp plan has been updated periodically with just minor changes since 2009. I don't know if we need a major overhaul, but it needs at least a little bit of an overhaul. The board may want to look at, we may want to look at extending out some of our business and the business development nodes in the comp plan. There's a lot of things that we need to look at. Mr. Walker and I have discussed, it might be a good idea to have certainly at a minimum, a workshop with the board and maybe even incorporate the board in the planning commission so the planning commission can hear see what the board's vision is for this plan. And of course, we get public input on this too. That may have some drive in it as well, but certainly we want to encapsulate the board's vision as to where we want to go with this. There's a few components. We're noticing that we have some serious lids on top of the pots for residential development. We may want to look at some of our density criteria. It seems like every time we try to get something, we had the same trouble when we did our workforce housing. Every time we'd go to one direction, we'd hit a wall and we'd have to kind of brainstorm it to try to get where we want to be. So there's a lot of things to think about. And through these work sessions, I'll prepare some information for the board. We'll go through that and, we'll highlight it and bullet point it so we can be thinking about it. But it's a lot of work for all of us, the board, the planning commission, and staff to put this together. And it's due for at least an overhaul. I don't know if you call it a major overhaul. Because our comp plan right now directs us to we want to maintain a rural community. So how do we balance a rural community and still, expand our development nodes and that type of thing? We don't want strip development up and down 33 or 17. But on the other hand, 17 may start to see some more traffic. They're opening up the bridge over 17 bridge, 17 to 301 over into Maryland. VDOT's kind of warned us about that a little bit. So there's a lot of things we may look at, as we go through especially the future land use map. And Matt and I have also discussed we may get the PDC involved in some of our nuts and bolts type of things. In the plan itself, a lot of your language is hinged directly to your ability to obtain grants. So we want to make sure that language is prime and good for grant acquisition. So there's some things we're going to look at in this new update. Have any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add on very quickly to what Dave said. We discussed, I think, this some in the board retreat recently back in November. The idea behind having the PDC perhaps get involved is handle some of the background information like Dave has very well illustrated. Check those boxes so we're able to apply for the grants and meet the requirements on the federal and the state level. A lot of background work goes into a comprehensive plan that the PDC is very well equipped to do, either through themselves, their staff, or their consultants. And what I'd like to do is, in preparation for perhaps that work session, is get a proposal from the PDC on how much it would cost for them to work with our staff on the comprehensive plan. And as Dave said, we discussed it over the Christmas holidays, potentially having a joint work session with the board and the planning commission, maybe to serve more as a kickoff to the comprehensive plan revision. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the language in the comprehensive plan, if my memory serves, back from my former planning life, was preserve the rural character while encouraging vibrant village clusters. And that's still underway in many respects. So plan's still appropriate, but probably, as Dave says, needs to be brushed up a little bit. And this board largely is new, with the exception of Wayne. So this is a new board. We have many new planning commission members, and a work session of that type would, I think, be well justified.
I think it'd be a great idea.
I'll put that out to our planning commission. So I guess we would try to do that in the latter part of January, maybe? I don't know if we have to set a date now, but we.
I know the board's going to be meeting a lot on the budget over the next couple months. One date that stuck out in my mind was the day when we have the agency and staff presentations on the budget. The entirety of the board will be in this room that Friday to hear those requests, and we routinely finish those around 1, 2 o'clock. So we can take an hour break for lunch and come back in and have a joint work session with the planning commission on that date if it's something the board's up for. It would be a long marathon day, but all of us have that on our calendars preliminarily anyway. So just a suggestion. It could be any day the board wants.
I love the idea, Dave, of getting the planning commission and the board together in a kickoff manner, but I would really encourage us to include the EDA. We have a new blood there, and they really should be hearing those comments real time and injecting their own. So I would just make us all think of making sure the EDA is, and I think the
Three-way
date-
work session,
Yeah.
I like it.
But we haven't had a session like that since I've been here, so, I mean, I don't
think we've ever had.
I think it would be a great idea to get everybody, because sometimes the planning commission doesn't know exactly what the board's thinking. I try to convey it the best I can, but it's hard to encapsulate everybody's thoughts, and they can hear them themselves and work from that baseline, so to speak. So I think it's a great idea.
I as well think it's a good idea, based on some of the capital improvement projects that we're going to be involved in now and over the next couple of years. And it probably plays into the next thing I'm going to ask is, you did on all of these projects, some are necessary, some are urgent, some are desirable. And just for my benefit, when something, let's say necessary, becomes urgent, how is that reflected in the CIP plan? Do y'all regularly go in and make those adjustments of, and let me just add, and then you can brief me on what you have. And it's not necessarily a concern, but I see some start dates of 2024 or spring of 2023. I won't get into a discussion of what my personal opinion is on some of those dates, but some of them don't look to be thinking forward, realistic time frame. Does that make sense?
I understand. Well, now we're discussing the capital improvements plan, which
Yes.
we will act on tonight separately. But to your question, all that information as far as the urgency or what their timelines are submitted by the different agencies.
Okay.
So they set those, whether they determine whether it's urgent or necessary or whatever that immediate need is. So we just, when staff and the planning commission assembles the capital improvements plan, we're basically just copying and pasting what they've supplied to us. So
that there in itself would be a positive thing of why we all need to be together in that, because my opinion of what is urgent and your opinion of what is urgent may be vastly different.
Right.
And all of that may be skewed based on what the financial dollars are available to do
That's correct.
what
That's
we
correct.
have out there.
Yeah,
Exactly.
if I may elaborate a little bit along with Dave on that, it's the question we get every year, but the capital improvements plan is meant more as a guideline, not an actual capital improvements program. Y'all set the program every year when you actually adopt the budget and appropriate monies to it. The departments that routinely forward those projects up oftentimes just recycle them from the previous year.
Okay.
An example, sewer, it's always been at the top of the capital improvements priorities because the committee that reviews all the projects routinely puts it highest. But the dates float.
Right.
Because we're partnering with HRSD on that project, and the dates come kind of
Right.
as they come.
Well, and not to throw gasoline on the fire, but as an example, one of those projects that fell into that category was the sheriff's office, of how long it's taken to get it from the floor to actually starting the project.
And one of the reasons the sheriff's office kind of floated, if I can use that word again, it's not a good word to use on that project, but it's applicable. We had been in a holding pattern for asset forfeiture money. It was supposed to
Correct.
be coming down from the feds, but I don't know if we're going to wait any longer for that and just move forward with trying to do something because it's become urgent.
Right. Thank you, Dave.
Yep. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Oh,
All right. Mr. Beam.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll reference pages 255, 256, Resolution R 2023-01. If you recall, in our last meeting in December, County Administrator Matt said that he would present a resolution to you this year requesting authorization to go after additional funding through ARPA. We've been successful in gaining approval and authorization for monies. We put together the resolution. I think personally, and well, Ms. Heather kind of stepped out, I think we should actually go for more funding. I'll let Matt fight that battle. He's asking authorization to go for 11 million. I think we ought to go for more, but.
Well, we are applying for the DEQ grants too, so I'm
Okay.
trying to keep it in realism or realistic with what the Eastern Shore community's got with their direct appropriations.
Yeah, well.
If it was up to me, I'd ask for 42, but realistically, I think we have a decent idea how much money is available, and if we can get that, we'll be very lucky.
Yeah, so what we're asking for is for the board to authorize the county administrator to request that funding. It's been passed on to our representatives. It's being circulated now so that they have an idea of, and getting a head start, if you will, so that once the board approves, or hopefully approves, or gives the authorization to the county administrator to request the funding, that we're already ahead of the game.
And we're looking to approve this resolution for $11 million for the purpose of offsetting the Deltaville-Hartfield topping saluda, which is currently estimated at 41, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So moved on the motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Kuntz. Any more discussion?
I'm just a little curious, Mr. Beam, since you brought up a little bit of a difference of opinion between you and the administrator, how much more money do you think we should be going for? If you, like, what leads you to think, I mean, anytime it's a grant, you want to get as much. We all want to get as much as possible. But what is it that leads you to bring it up in this meeting and say, I think we could even do more?
From the standpoint of, in talking with Louis, who's the Middle Peninsula representative, and from our discussions with our representatives, there's about, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, there's about $17 million left in the fund, and understanding that there's other counties that are out there fighting for that money, but I would ask for as much as we could get, with the understanding that we're not going to get it all, but it doesn't hurt to ask for it.
And Matt, does your interpretation of that, is there some penalty by asking for 17 where we might not get the 11? Is that, where do you two differ in your logic?
Well, Charlie's information may be more up to date than mine, but I was under the impression there was 70 million.
Oh.
But there's, I think, about 50 other communities and authorities
Right.
going for that money.
Yeah.
So I did the math.
Yeah. Yeah, so your recommendation is 11.
It is.
And that's the
Just
motion.
as a follow-on, this is in addition to the other grants we've already submitted.
Sure.
Right.
Very good, thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Coons?
Aye?
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. And next is the airport.
Next item is the airport. Gentlemen, if you'll reference pages 257 through 260, these are grants that we've received and have been approved by the state. And if you'll read the letters, it's basically asking for the county to agree and sign, stating that the county would accept the grants. The deadline for submission or signing of these and sending them back to the state is the 16th of January. So I'm requesting from the board that they authorize the county administrator to sign the documents so that we can return them.
So moved on the motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Williams. Any further discussion?
And just a question for clarity, this is for both grants, correct?
That is correct.
20 and 21?
One grant is for the runway construction, the other is for the lighting and for the PAPI system. Additionally, the grant for the runway, that includes what was included in the agreement as far as the landscaping on the Perkerson property, which I've met with Mr. Perkerson. We've walked the site, looked at the layout. I've also had conversations with the landscaper. We've scaled down, if you will, or pared down the list of proposed trees and so on. Mr. Perkerson and I agree that there's some things on that list that do not need to be there. So there's potential for cost savings there, but also things that that will be planted that will be native to the area and satisfy both the agreement as well as what we feel needs to be planted on county property.
Any other discussion?
Just one. Hey, Charlie, did it say when you're going to start, or just in progress?
We're finalizing the list now, but we've missed the winter season, so it'll probably be in the spring. We'll be planting, as well as DEQ has issues. We cannot close out the contract until the spring because we have to do some more planting. We have to do 80% coverage with seed, with grass, and so on. So there's still some issues that Mr. Barber's going to have to be dealing with as far as the contract, but this will get us the monies, the funding that we'll need in preparation for closing it out.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Coons?
Aye?
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, next we have citizen appointments. Anne Marie?
There are two applicants for the EDA. Both of their information is in the packet.
We're really fortunate to have two applicants for the EDA vacancy. My recommendation to the board is that, first, I'm extremely grateful that Jerry Crittenden has volunteered for community service. He has been a great contributor to the Deltaville Ballpark, and the Deltaville Community Association is very active in that. He has expressed an interest in Board of Zoning Appeals, the EDA, and the Planning Commission, and I would gratefully accept his service on on any of those. I also, at the same time, feel we're extremely fortunate to have Carlton Revere to have volunteered to serve on the EDA and only the EDA. As you probably know, Mr. Revere and his family business was sold a few years ago, and I think that Mr. Revere's business experience would be a great contributor to the Economic Development Authority. And so what I would recommend to the board is to ask Mr. Revere to serve on the EDA and to follow up with Mr. Crittenden on either Board of Zoning Appeals or Planning Commission as soon as vacancies are available.
We're only putting one person in on the EDA, is that correct?
There's only one opening.
It's only one opening. That's based on their bylaws?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. Okay.
So I will entertain a motion for a candidate for the EDA position.
If it's okay, I'd like to make a motion for Jerry Crittenden for the EDA and Scott Schaefer for the Wetlands Board.
I'll second that.
Hold on.
Is there any discussion? I would ask that we vote separately on the two positions.
Do that.
Okay, the first one is for EDA. We'll start with Mr. Harris. EDA for.
I'm a little
Jerry.
confused. Are we voting on the motion, or are we voting, as the chairman just asked, individually? Because the motion is not that.
Okay.
Can you revise the motion?
I'd be happy to revise. The first motion is for Jerry Crittenden for Economic Development Authority. And I'll take a second if there is one.
I thought that's the motion we already had, was that you made, correct?
Yes, and now we're splitting it out into two individuals so that we can.
Okay, I'm just trying to help you out here. Where do we need the second on this?
Now?
Second.
Roll call?
Okay. This is for the EDA for Jerry Crittenden, and I am at Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Jesse,
Aye.
Mr. Kunz,
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough.
No.
I'd like to make a motion for Scott Schaefer for Wetlands Board.
Second if we need it.
Second, yes.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Jesse,
Aye.
Mr. Kunz,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is budget supplement
Nope.
request.
Wetland, oh, did we do Wetlands Board? Sorry, my bad. Shh, my bad.
This is your, Anne Marie, your budget supplement request.
Sorry, I'm still on my boards and committees. There we go. At this time, we're asking for $12,500 to replace a vehicle that has been, that needs immediate replacement. Sorry, in the Sheriff's Department that needed immediate replacement.
Entertain motion.
So moved.
Second.
And I guess maybe I should clarify, I move that we fund the $12,500 for the vehicle. Is that okay, Miss? Now I'm trigger shy.
Motion by Mr. Coons, second by Mr. Harris. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Jesse?
Aye.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Didn't I just do this? Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye. Motion carries. Administrator updates.
Couple of things, Mr. Chairman. You have a report on the cigarette tax, so I won't go over that. If you have any questions, Anne Marie or I can probably answer those. Wanted to talk a little bit about board retreat. I think we had it on the agenda last month, and we just didn't get around to it for whatever reason. I thought it was a very good retreat on November 18th. The county attorney and I both got a lot of very useful information out of that. And for the sake of brevity, I'll just kind of cut to the chase. We got the board's top-ranked priorities, which are in your packet. We are very impressed with the consultant who came out and handled the group facilitation and conducted the retreat. If it's the board's pleasure, I would invite him to do it again next November 17th and get him on schedule for doing so. And just, I guess, as a further discussion point, now that we have, I think, the board's top-ranked priorities, this will, on top of what normal staff reports we get from staff, be the bulk of our staff updates, either on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis as needed for these projects, so the board knows where they stand. As the board can see, the budget process, that's pretty self-explanatory. We've got our work sessions, and we've got our work cut out for us this year. For a variety of reasons, I think this budget year is, believe it or not, going to be slightly easier than previous years. And I hope, knock on wood, that statement doesn't come back to haunt me.
Is the video recording this right now?
Yeah, we are
Okay,
recording this.
okay.
Reggie and I spoke briefly about it this morning, but I think it's going to be a very interesting year and hopefully one that's a little easier process. And we'll get more into that on Friday. But finishing my point, many of these top 10 involves a great deal of coordination with us and other entities. Sewer, not the least of which. We're working with our consultant engineer, we're working with the county engineer, we're working with Timmons, our consultant engineer, but more importantly, we're working with Hampton Roads Sanitation District. And that alone is going to take a little bit of a coordination effort on getting the reports back to the board that y'all want on a routine basis. We hope to start that this Friday when we have our sewer discussion, as we have had for the last several years. This one's a little unique or different from previous years in that we actually have a project being built. So we're breaking ground and moving forward with that project at Cook's Corner. Some of these are going to require some coordination with the schools. And I look forward to doing that probably in greater coordination than even we've had in past years. But with that, look forward to the challenge, and hopefully we'll be able to present this data and these updates in a form and in a manner and in the detail the board desires in the year to come. And that's all I had on the board retreat. I've got one other item I'd like to discuss, though.
Quick question, though. On the board retreat, I don't have a problem with the November, whatever the date was, 18th.
November 17th, I believe.
I don't have a problem with that as long as they understand that that's probably a flexible date.
Right.
We may have to change it a week early or a week late. Right now, November is way too far out for me to say I'm good on
Right.
that date. But,
Well, we'll get it on their schedule and let them know that it's to be determined, but that's our preliminary date that we had in mind.
I as well echo in your comment. I thought it was a valuable experience for us to do that. I'm glad that you and the county attorney found some interest and clarification, if that's the right wordage, for that. But it gave us an opportunity to make sure we're all in step on what we think is the major projects that we're dealing with the county, and personally to get to know some people that, you know, we didn't know. It's important for me to know all these guys, what their hot button is, what gets them crazy or what gets them happy. So it was valuable, and thank you for putting that together.
Well, it was probably a couple years overdue. I think we've had one in the last 3 years, so now we've had two.
One thing you brought up, Matt, that I just want to touch on is if there's more coordination coming between the school and the sewer system, it might be a great opportunity to look at also that area between the middle school and the ball fields, because there's not a natural school county nexus. And if we're already doing projects over there, let's take a harder look at that area and get that parking situation improved further. I mean, we started on it, but now if we're going to start doing construction around properties in the schools, let's take a stronger look at that and see if the school take that a little more seriously with our assistance.
Absolutely. It's one of those facilities, too, that's going to, nexus with sports tourism.
Yeah.
We have excellent facilities in this county. I think we're blessed to have the facilities we have. And getting that word out is going to involve a lot of coordination with the schools and making sure that we have the parking and have the facilities open and available for those purposes.
Just to echo on that just a little bit, so everybody's on the same page. Of course, John and I have talked about it, the ability for increased parking there for not only the school, but for the complex, if you're looking to do something with tourism over time. The complex committee has already started discussing potential options and have also discussed with some potential people that could help with putting on some events at the sports complex. As it stands, however, now when we have the Little League district tournament, we're pretty stressed with parking, and God forbid that that's going on at the same time as a soccer tournament, because then you have absolutely no parking, excess parking available for that, or even parking to cover the existing people coming to that. So my point is the complex committee is already starting to think about options and ways to use that complex further. And the benefit is whatever's going on there, it's very limited dollars that the complex comes to the county, because the complex committee and the Little League has done a great job in being able to provide a lot of the capital improvements there on the property at no cost to the county. So anything that can generate even more income for beautification project, et cetera, expanding the facility or improving the facility is a plus thing for the county for sure. So, thanks.
It's a very good point, and I understand the importance of that, having had a kid involved in Little League in the past, and those few parking spots are pretty prime when you get there late.
Well, then the other thing is we're talking about a high school renovation and the need for additional facilities down in the middle of the county where the elementary school and the middle school are. If that evolves at all, we really want to make sure we're liaising with this committee that's done such a nice job so affordably for the community. We want to partner with them and make sure if there is a change coming to the middle school or the elementary school, and I'm not breaking news, but that's some of the debate that's going on, is where does the facility expansion need to happen? We need to really keep that committee tied in, because they're a huge entity right in the middle of that complex, and we're not trying to disrupt them. We want to work with them.
Right. Absolutely. Well, the last thing I have, Mr. Chairman, was just a reminder for important meetings that we know are coming from the VACO conference. We have the Rural Caucus reception on Wednesday, January the 18th. VACO, VML, and PDC Local Government Day on Thursday, the 19th. And then the VACO VML Legislative Reception is that evening on January 19th. I plan to have a robust presence down at the General Assembly, not just on these days, to make sure that any information they need from me on any of our grant requests, they have. And between the budget, that, and a couple other items, I'm going to be stepping and fetching, because I think it's very important that, while we have good delegates, we have a good senator, I think, that look after our interests, we need to be down there looking after them as well, just in case they need any information. Charlie and I have prepared talking points we've given to Louie and our lobbyists through the PDC, but there's nothing like the guy being there. And if I need my chairman, sometimes he's down in Richmond, I may be able to call him. in and call in the big guns if we need them. But it's my intention to really, I hate this, use the word lobby for these monies, but that's what I'm going to do. Last but not least is the VACO Chairpersons Institute. I don't know if either one of our chair or vice chairs are interested in going, but it's a very worthwhile institute. I would highly recommend going. I've been 3 times, and I've never been a chairman of a board, but my chairman have wanted me with them when we went. Hopefully, I won't be asked to go again, because they'll make me teach something if I go back a 4th time. But it is a very good institute. It really gives a good cross-section, a good flavor of the interrelationships that the board chairs, vice chair need to understand in working with boards and leading them. And that was all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam County Attorney.
Not much to add, other than I've also attended that institute when I first started in this position, and I found it invaluable. It was good information, even not being, as Matt said, in those positions. So if at all there's an interest, I would highly encourage. I have nothing further unless there's any questions for me.
Thank you. All right, any unfinished business? Right, any new business?
I don't know if this qualifies as new business or not, but I just wanted to make the board aware that, I'm seeing our interest in sports attractions growing, and I'm seeing our walking trails starting to come to fruition. I've enjoyed the Heritage Trail. We have an expansion in mind. We have a funded project in Deltaville, and I am taking some personal time to look for other opportunities to expand trails within Middlesex County. I think it would be very valuable to understand where those potentially could be. I think right now we have in-house staff that knows more about easements in this county than they ever will know. So if ever we were to pursue what we talked about 3-4 years ago when we started with these trails, which is an extension that maybe even goes all the way from the east end to the northwest end, we need to start looking at it. And so I'm not asking for anything, and I'm not saying I have any authority to do anything, but I'm starting some exploration to understand better whether that's even an option for us, whether we have little lanes that could connect some of our churches and community centers and sports fields and museums in a way that could be used by the people that like to walk, run, ride horses, bike. So I'm just exploring it, looking at it, and if I have anything in the next couple months that I think is worth sharing, I will pass it on and see if we want to look at maybe something more formal in terms of a strategy to step through it. But right now, I'm finding that there's a lot of consultants out there that have a lot of services they want to sell, and we've been through that, and there is value there. But I'd like to go and do a lot of the research with the local knowledge that I have, and just sort of see what our options are if we want to pursue something that down the road. So nothing other than just to let you know that's one of my little side projects that I'm looking into.
Other new business? Okay, matters presented to the board. Wayne?
I don't have anything, but I can also say that I did go to the chair and chairman and vice chair of the institute. You get a lot of rich information, and also you get to meet other people from other areas of the state. So it's very good, and you get a lot of good knowledge out of that. Thank you.
Don?
I don't have anything for the board at this point, unless, and I may be off base on this, the discussions of the let me get the right word. It's not called a pump station at the school. What's it called?
The sewer pump station?
Yes.
Lift station?
Yeah.
I mean, pump station, lift station are interchangeable.
Okay, well, I think
Pressure
that's more-
station, what have you.
Right. That there's some discussion going on with the school about the property adjacent to them, about putting that there. Could you give, or help educate me on what is our responsibility on that? And is that a decision that the school board is going to funnel to us, or just basic how that's going to work.
It's my understanding, based on the last discussion I was privy to, that they were seeking, I want to think 40 to 50 feet along one of the boundaries. They were interested in the property next door, but they needed a little additional space. To what degree the board's going to be involved in that decision, I don't know. I think it's largely going to be a school board issue unless the board needs to authorize their granting of the boundary line adjustment or gifting the property. I'm not sure how that works. Haven't worked with school property disposition, so I can find that out for you. But that was the last I was privy to. They needed a certain amount of footage along the eastern boundary of the school, western boundary of the property they were interested in.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I just wanted some clarification on that, and you've done that. I just was a little unsure, and I guess that's because the property, that discussion with the school, is it on school property?
The lift station itself, again, I'm acting on information from last I understood, is on a property next door. They just need an additional amount of footage from the school board, some additional property along that boundary.
Okay.
So the actual lift station itself is on the property next door to the school.
Okay.
But they're interested in having a little bit of additional land. And since you asked, I'll add this one little component. The position and location of that lift station, if it works out, actually benefits us in the long run, in that when we come back in on the next phase of sewer deployment, which Locust Hill was one of those, if we did an E1 type system, access to that lift station at that location makes it fairly easy to serve both the elementary school and middle school, as well as the corridor.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Matt, for that.
Yep.
John? Reggie?
Touching a little bit off what Don was saying, because I had the same thing, but the lift station, in the schools, I'm looking forward to 23 to work along with the schools on some of the things they got to get done. But, if they really, hook into the sewer system, that'll give them all the parking space they want, because they can get rid of what they got. So, you have a dozen here and, a dozen there, so that will work out really. But some of them I think they got somebody to represent the schools. They want to go somewhere to look, see if they have any odor or something like that, which I haven't told them yet, but I'm going to go along to look at it, because at the end of the day, we're going to have to, say something. The second thing is the seniors. We've been talking a lot about the seniors, and I just mentioned it earlier that we haven't did anything as far as the seniors that in need as the real estate taxes. And the fee was $500. I think it's been that way for about 10, 12 years. It never changed. It's almost like you're going to help somebody, and then all of a sudden it sits there. And I'm not kidding when I say people don't know. That was one of the reasons I asked you. They really do not know. Most of them don't use computers, and they don't know. And the way we won't get out to do something for the seniors is to, we're going to just have to work at it. And I'm kind of like looking forward to trying to do something to help the seniors, and definitely work with the schools. I'm very interested on working with the schools this year to see which way that the county can do things that's going to benefit the county in the long run. And I know we got some very interesting things when we look at all these CIPs. So I'll just leave that there and thank God for the shape that the auditor was saying we was in. But he didn't make it simple for me, because I look at my checkbook and look at my account. It's simple for me. If I'm getting more bills than I got money, I'm not in good shape. So sooner or later, he's going to tell me that when I ask him to add up all the bills and how much money we got and how much, he said, how much we got coming in, then we can sit back and talk about it. But other than that, it's been fine. I'm looking forward to this year. I'm looking forward to it. So Matt and ran everybody away from me and gave me one on one side and one on the other side, but that's okay.
Well, one of the things I could say is every year when the board organizes, y'all can move your seats. You're not locked in stone. And just for the public, if I may, Mr. Chairman, one of the main reasons I wanted to move over here is I only have 40 to 60% hearing in this ear. It's very hard for me to hear you when you talk, even with a mic. It's impossible for me to hear whisper here in this ear. So I was having to turn completely around. It almost looked like I was trying to kiss our county attorney every time she wanted to whisper to me. So I was like, well, if I give you this ear, it doesn't look as awkward with me turning around. So.
Is that why the county attorney moved over there as well? Was it the, was it the kissing?
She followed me. What can I say?
I'm going to strike that from the record.
I just had a couple of things. One is the Basin Consortium Workforce Board that I participate in, which is a number of counties that are trying to promote job placements and job opportunities. We had a meeting last month, and the report was, first observation, that hospitality workers throughout the entire region have been challenged. Those jobs have really declined. This organization did report that they made 458 job placements during the year, so significant progress there. They also have introduced a virtual reality tool to introduce career options with welding and automobile service as options, as examples in this virtual reality job promotion, which I thought was a great idea. They said that they recently actually brought this to Middlesex High School and set it up in the library. So I thought that was a very clever way to introduce some trades. They also have been looking for an office in the Middle Peninsula. Louis Lawrence is helping them to search for an appropriate location, and they're going to actually make a presentation to the PDC at their January meeting. The other group that I participate in is the Heritage Committee invited me to participate in their recent meeting where the Fairfield Foundation was also in attendance, as well as representatives from various community organizations, including the NAACP, and good progress on the historic designation of the St. Clair Walker area. The Department of Historic, DHR, I think, is Department of Historic Resources. Their consultant will be visiting the St. Clair Walker complex several times. They will be interviewing several citizens who have firsthand knowledge of the history of the location, and they're going to prepare a one-page summary of the project and provide that to the Board of Supervisors. But we're on a very good track there to have that area listed on the National Register of the Park Service with a historic district designation, which is very exciting. That's it for me. If there's nothing else, I will open the floor for public comment. Would anybody like to address the board at this time?
Can I?
Yeah.
All right. I already did one today, so that's why. The economic development, the discussions you've been having, Greg Greckmeyer, Topping, Virginia, poor Reggie. The one thing that I kept noticing when we were talking about the school supply and back to the back to school bash and so on, as much as we're spending time on discussing tourism and so on, we're not spending as much time about how do we build a cohesive community. For example, how do we get the word out? How do we manage bringing people together? And one of the discussions was that the fact that we have the summer coming up, when school let out, the churches wanted to put together programs. I know Christ Church was trying to do one. I know of about four or five, and they didn't have we almost needed a career fair of summer programs so that people can go find out what's going to be happening in the county for kids to attend. That doesn't even have to just be kids. It could be seniors is another example. But we don't spend a lot of time trying to build our community as much as we look to the outside, and obviously you guys are more about the nuts and bolts of the community. And I don't know how we do that. And I thought Facebook would help and Nextdoor and some of these things. They're just alienating everybody right now. So I don't have the answer. I've been talking about River Life. John's heard me preach it. I really want to launch it this year, but it's not going to be easy for everybody to manage. But how do we do that? And maybe I'm looking to you guys to create a position or get together a new committee or something like that that takes on this responsibility. For example, if all these churches that want to do something with kids in the summer all did something a different week and fed the kids, and wouldn't this be cool? I mean, I don't know how to do it myself, but it's a gap, and I don't know how to solve it, but I'm looking to you guys to start thinking about ways to build our community versus, maybe tourism and so on and outside influences, or just the nuts and bolts. You guys have the power. So, thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Anyone else? I'll close public comment and entertain a motion to recess until our 7 o'clock meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Roll call. We don't actually need a vote for recess. I can just call a recess.